And we are back. Jessica Seel, Dennis Martin, Gillan. You want to hear a great way to start a podcast? Me clearing my throat. I had like a half hour to do this. I'm going to clear my throat. Sorry.
Well, I've been sick, so you can hear in my voice. 'Tis the season because we got some early blooms on the trees out here in South Carolina.
And then we got cold weather.
And it's getting hold of us. We had 80-degree weather last week. Man, did that vitamin D feel good.
Shorts to scarves. That's the time of the year for a lot of folks. And it's weird. And spring, by the way, spring is the toughest season for suicides. People think it's the holidays. They think it's the holidays. It's not. Springtime, suicides go up.
Tell me more about that. I didn't know that.
There's a couple theories out there. One theory is, well, you feel like crap in the winter and the vitamin D, it's dark, it's gloomy. And then the darkness and the gloominess goes away and everyone's out jogging in front of your house and the flowers are out and you still feel like crap because you're depressed. Yeah. And you're like, wow, I thought maybe with the change of seasons, I would change. And it still sucks. That's one theory. The other theory is, I read this one, allergens are present. And allergens is an inflammation response. And a lot of our diseases in our body. Now, I'm not a doctor, but I used to be a pharmaceutical rep, which is like...
Really? Learning so many things about you. I would have never guessed it.
A lot of our disease states are based on inflammation. Like
yes.
Pains, you name it. Even cardiovascular disease, it's inflammation. So they think in the allergen response, there's inflammation present. And I know as an allergy sufferer, I wake up after 9 hours of sleep and I'm dead tired because my body's fighting this. It's overreacting is what it's doing. The pollen is not going to kill me, but my body's launched a response and it's wearing me out. So I've already started the nasal sprays when we had that 80-degree day. Started that stuff. I can feel it. It's coming. I'm going to try to fight the good fight with medicine and go from there.
Listen, I was trying to fight the depression with something that I love because I have seasonal depression, which is real, folks, for some. And I got out and ran. I'm training for a half marathon, which is, again, one of my therapies.
I just learned something about you now. Come on now.
Oh, yeah. This will be my fourth one. And listen, I'm no expert in this. I'm a turtle, but I run. And so I got out, felt great, got in my car, and immediately felt the tickle, I call it. And it took me down.
I could hear it in your voice. You sound like a dog right now.
Yes, I'm sorry, folks. My other therapists are doggies, and they like to bark whenever anyone pulls in our driveway. So I'm going to let Dennis talk and mute.
You must be getting an Amazon delivery, which is a daily occurrence at my house. That's another topic one day. Hey, talk to me about the half marathon. When is the next half marathon?
Well, and you'll appreciate this. I've traveled for most of my half marathons to other cities. My most recent one was in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, with a friend from there who is 72 years old and runs a whole marathon, so I have no excuses. But I will be doing this here in my community in Columbia, South Carolina in April, and it is through downtown. It's called the Governor's Cup. I've always wanted to do it. It's just a symbol of South Carolina, and you get some pretty cool swag, which is also an important piece. And I'm hoping that I'll have some folks come out and support me and hold up signs, which is the best part. If you've never done a half or a whole marathon, you see some really great signs. My favorite thus far that I had a T-shirt made out of, and not getting political at all, but I think we can all laugh and agree that it was, I run better than our government. And so this is...
Everybody does. Turtles run better than our government.
This is my T-shirt that I wear just for a good laugh. And that's everybody loves it. It's always a hit anytime I wear it.
That's a good one. I shocked the audience here. I ran one marathon in my life.
Marathon, not even a half, a whole,
the full
right?
one. Yeah, wow. The 26.2. And you want to know what I ran it in?
Yeah.
T-shirt and shorts. No, that's an old joke.
I was like, wait a minute. I thought you were going to give me a time here.
I wanted to get under 4 hours. This is 24 years ago. I wanted to get under 4 hours. I ran it in 4 hours and 57 seconds. I couldn't find 58 seconds. 3:59:59 sounds so much cooler than 4:01. 4 hours, 1 second. Just sounds so much cooler, even though it's 2 seconds off. But I did 4 hours, 57 seconds. Still pissed about it, but here we go.
You know why? I don't know if you ever do this, but the reason that I started doing it, and I'm a huge fitness person. I've been working out solidly for the last 20 years. I'm 51 years old. I want to be one of those women that, like my friend that's in her 70s, still out there lifting weights and keeping myself active. But I started it because, and I talk about this when I talk about my dad's death. For about 10 years, I just struggled with low self-esteem, depression, feeling like I wasn't doing anything, feeling like a
Mm.
failure. Not sure how it really came from that, but it did. I know it did from years of therapy. And I just kind of went gangbusters and decided to do everything that scared me or that I didn't think I was going to be able to do, to prove to myself that I can do hard things, that I am worthy, and that
Wow.
I am a person that can accomplish things. Because for many years after my dad's death, I didn't really accomplish a whole lot. Everything I tried, I stopped or failed, or at least in my mind. And so it's important to me to really kind of push the envelope, and it's part of my therapy.
That's incredible. You're doing some stuff to build your confidence, because I feel like, having lost the two brothers, and it is a tough subject, as our podcast says, but I felt like losing somebody to suicide knocked my confidence so far down. In fact, it was
Yeah.
non-existent.
Why? What is that? What's
And I
that
don't know.
about?
It's a form of rejection. I don't know what it
Yeah,
is, but man, oh man, I was beating myself up. My confidence to this day still suffers. Let's be honest.
mine
And
too.
I have to do stuff to, counter that. But it's a beautiful part about getting older. You don't care about so much stuff anymore. Like, that's why I was trying to tell the kids when I speak, like, listen, get older. I'm not being apathetic. I'm just saying, like, I don't care what other people think anymore. And I used to care a lot about it. Now I don't care about it at all. As God and I are square, we're good.
That's right.
And my lovely wife, I do care about that. But confidence just takes a huge hit. So all the stuff you're doing, running those marathons, half marathons, has to build your confidence doing hard things.
Oh yeah. I mean, even when I quit college after my dad died because I was 18, first semester in college. Probably a good thing. I was just doing what our culture tells us we should do. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was a education major so I could have summers off. This is real. This is
Well, that's
real.
how you pick. Yeah, it's a great
Not
job.
a reason to be a teacher, an educator, right? But this is sadly, I didn't know any better because I didn't really live in a world where I was encouraged to do anything great. I hate to say that, but that's part of it too, because my dad was mentally ill and he didn't feel that way. And so it reflected on his children. However, I'm proud to say that I feel like all three of us have kind of really come back with a vengeance, if you will. But that's why I went back to school, because I'd stopped and dropped out and was floundering. And I was like, I'm going to finish this thing. And I did. And man, that helped. That little things push that self
Oh
esteem
yeah.
up.
My stepson went to welding school, and I think everybody on the planet should go to a trade school graduation. It was one of the most uplifting ceremonies I've ever been to. These are the two people that spoke, that they chose to speak at this graduation. That the teacher said, these guys are unbelievable. Both had battled an addiction, are trying to get back on their
Wow.
feet. And they were like
Lovely.
up on the stage. They put them up. They're like, no more hiding, no more shame. Like, listen, this lady got there. I was in drugs. I did jail. Then one guy was, I was in jail, and this is how I'm going to get back on my feet. I'm going to be a welder or HVAC. Or it was unbelievable. Everybody should go to one trade school graduation in your life. I walked out of like, faith in mankind restored. Like, these people are clawing their way back to the top. So it was kind of cool.
That's one of my favorite projects I've worked on with my job, is working with businesses to create a culture policy so that folks that aren't perfect, none of us are, that are dealing with things can be in a situation with an employer where they don't have to hide. They can use their experience as a positive, not a negative, and that they feel open to ask for support. And that also builds, when you have to hide, it makes you feel like a bad person, and that self-esteem just decreases, right? Um,
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, when you could see things turn negatives into a positive, it's just a great thing.
Everybody loves a good comeback. We just do. And everybody's recovering from something. That's the two chapters in my unwritten book in my head. It'll come out one day
That's right. That's
when I
right.
sit down in front of a typewriter. Hey, I'm going to switch subjects here. I'm looking at my phone, which is rude, by the way, but it's related to this. I get 2 alerts every day. I get 2 alerts from Google. I don't know if you ever set up an alert, like you just get whatever the topic
Oh
is.
my gosh, alerts are the
No, I don't get like news alerts. I get an email once a day, and the topic is one of the topics is my last name. It's not a very popular last name, Gillan. I get that, and every now and then there's some drunk Irish guy, who gets arrested. He gets in there, so it's like, all right, I'm checking on my kinfolk. The other alert I get and this is related to our podcast. It's a tough subject. I typed in the word suicide, and if there's any news article,
Oh,
it's brutal, but it's show prep. I've been doing this for years. I
yeah.
get it every day. I just scan it real quick. I often look to see if anything's local. I look to see often the person trying to figure it out and some trends. You mind if I just comment on some trends? And
Yes, please.
I'll read you some article right here. But some of the trends I see, which is disturbing, is a lot of increase in murder suicides. That's a lot of the headlines. And I know people who've gone to suicide support groups who've lost loved ones to murder suicide. And it's awful because gone is gone, before they exited this world. One of them was Dylan Klebold, the Columbine shooter's mom. I went and saw her
Mhm.
speak, and she has a TED talk. Her son didn't come home that day. A lot of kids didn't, but her son, who perpetrated the crime, didn't come home either. She lost a kid, and she was not invited to all those events at the high school to honor the loss of the loved ones. She lost a loved one. You have to watch the TEDx talk. I made that face too. I'm like, you raised a killer. But then I saw the TEDx talk. I'm like, oh my gosh.
No, I'm making that
Her,
face because it's hard for us to wrap our head around it, but that is a mother who lost something.
yeah,
Regardless,
she lost her son that day
right.
to suicide. So I'm going to read you some headlines and this is going to put you on the spot. Just some quick Jessica thoughts on this one.
Sure.
First one's positive on this alert from yesterday. Brief doctor's orders is the headline, using a zero suicide approach to reduce suicides in healthcare systems. Are you familiar with zero
Yes,
suicide
I am.
initiative?
I went through the training.
Fantastic. Know what they're trying to do? They're trying to pick people off in the doctor's office because they said half the people who die by suicide have seen their physician or a healthcare worker, both mental or physical, within the last 6 months.
My dad had seen his the month before.
Whoa.
True. I 100% agree. That is a touch point that I feel like a lot of people are uncomfortable addressing. Healthcare providers are very uncomfortable, and I don't blame them. I understand that. They're scared.
They're getting better. I did have an incident with my
Oh, yeah.
primary
They're getting a
care
lot.
doctor. They're getting a lot better. She goes, she'd be doing blood pressure, temperature, all the pre-work before you go
Yeah.
see. I was just getting a routine physical, and then she said, "Mr. Gillan, I'm sorry, but I have to ask you these questions. Have you been sad lately?" And I'm like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa! Don't apologize for asking that.
Right. Are
It
you
was a,
sorry?
it was a teachable moment." I said, "Do you know what I do for a living?" She goes, "I have no idea. Just pay your bill. That's all she cares about." I told her I do suicide prevention work, and I want you to lean into that question. It was a really cool moment to have a conversation with a healthcare worker. So who probably did not go through the training, or she would not be apologizing for asking that question. She was doing a depression screening tool at the office
Wow.
and
That's
apologizing for it.
well, because people, I mean, let's be honest, there are people that take offense to that, but it's still that stigma, right? Something's wrong with you, you're bad. There's shame associated with feeling bad or having these thoughts. I mean, we've got a long way to go. We're making great strides. By the way, my dad died in 1992, so this was essentially 30 something years ago that he saw his doctor. Things have changed drastically since then.
Yeah, so we're doing that training. That's zero suicide. If you're out there listening to it, it's an initiative. If you go to the doctor's office and they start asking you questions, that's what they're doing. All right, second article come up. There's a whole ton of them. This one's like, file it under no duh. Rate of suicide higher in the individuals with headaches.
Know someone that happened to as well.
Migraines are brutal.
Yeah, she was an accidental shooting and had problems for the rest of her life. She was a mother of three and took her own life, but she just couldn't handle the pain anymore.
I never knew, I don't suffer from headaches. And the people out there who do, God bless you. Because I was at training when I was a young kid at Merck in Pennsylvania. And the trainer had a migraine. And they came up to me and they said, "Listen, can you take her back to the hotel? She's sick." I'm like, what's the matter? She's got a headache. I'm like, "You go back to the hotel for a headache?" I'm like, "Come on, pop a few Advil or what, let's go." And she gets in my car. She's photosensitive. So her eyes are covered. Migraine. I had no clue how bad these were. Then we're driving down the road. She goes, "Dennis, pull over." She throws up on the side of the road, a migraine. And then she went back to bed and she was down for the count. I don't think we saw that till the next day, like at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. She walked in, she goes, "I'm better now." Like, holy crap, she lost a day.
And it's a little bit like mental illness or depression or anxiety. People don't believe it's a real thing. Oh, you're exaggerating. Or now I will say that I had people that always had migraines after they went out the night before and couldn't come into work. So I've seen that,
A
but they
migraine.
are real
Yeah.
things.
A very convenient migraine. No, it's bad. Headache. So that's a no duh. Here's another one. I'm going to throw one at you. Get your feedback here. Mental health and suicide awareness, a guide for pharmacists.
Another touch point, another opportunity, because let's be honest, there are some meds, if you hear this can cause death, blah, 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 all the things at the end, a lot of them say thoughts of suicide can increase. A
They
lot
do.
of the antidepressants, which is kind of oxymoron, right? I've heard that and I'm like, wow, is it all of these different associated risk factors, or is it really worth taking that medicine?
Because I'm not, not a scientist, not a pharmacist, and they're where the rubber meets the road. So they do see a lot of people. You're right. Touch point. They should be doing QPR training. Anyone, a gatekeeper, whatever. But I do know what's scary, and I've heard from people, anecdotal evidence here, that we lost this person and they were changing their medicine at the time, or they were titrating off, or going on a new one, and it was that transitional period, and they didn't make it through.
That was my dad. Yeah.
For
Not
real?
going to say the medicine. Yeah. But they changed. My dad
Yeah.
said this before, was on lithium, which is old school, right? Like that was back in the day what folks took with.
The gold standard.
Right. I mean, he had what they called manic depression back then, which was very obvious. When it became mainstream, right? And there were a few that came out really early on, they changed him to that medication, and within 2 weeks. So there's no proof that was what happened, but it was bizarre.
Wow. Now, a bunch of these articles, and we're not going to go into them, scrolling through these articles on my suicide feed from Google. A lot of them are the murder suicides we talked about earlier, a couple and 2 or 3 different ones. This next one kind of pissed me off because I can't figure out how to get to these guys. It was a older guy. It says former WT publisher dies by suicide in Lions Park. It's in Wyoming. The reason it pissed me off is one, I wish the guy would have got help. It's those older white guys that bother me. I can't figure out how to get them in a room. I can get the college kids in a room. They're doing awesome. By the way, 15 to 24 years old, suicides went down. That group's talking about it. This group, I can't figure out how to get them in a room. I've done some great work with a couple church associations, the Lutheran Men in Mission. They get people in the room. I'd like to see the room packed with guys like this. So I started reading this guy's obituary. This is why I'm mad at the guy, because he had grandkids. And I just had this vision of the kid going, hey, Nanny or Nana, where's Pop-Pop? And I was like, oh, dude, if you just would have got help. But it's a tough subject and it's a complicated disease state. So now I went from being mad at the guy because he's gone, now like grace, like, oh dear, what was he going through, like my brothers? But Wyoming, and this is a little fun fact for our listeners, the western states like Wyoming, Montana, Colorado have a high suicide rate if you looked at geographic data. And one of the factors is access to lethal means. They all have guns out there. All right, that's fine. But there are some studies, and they're looking at it, and you talked about vitamin D and the weather and all that stuff. Elevation. Somebody talked about elevation. That's a theory.
Do you remember when people used to say, I've heard 2 theories, that Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania had the highest rate of suicide. I don't know why I remember this.
Pittsburgh.
Because it's dark and dreary a lot of the time. And if you've ever been there, hey, if you're listening from Pittsburgh, had a blast there running, but the weather was horrible.
I love Pittsburgh. I go there all the time.
I love it. Hey, pepperoni bread. That's all I'm saying. And then
pepperoni roll.
Okay.
You call it what it is.
I'm sorry. I'm a Southern girl. And then I remember another anecdotal, I don't want to call it a fact because I don't know if it is, that dentists had a high rate of suicide. Do you remember hearing that?
Yeah. You heard that. You heard dentists, you hear vets. We all know by looking at occupational data, it's miners, the guy who makes rocks, not little kids, but the guys mining and extraction is high, construction's really high. Think about male-dominated businesses, and high opioid use now, painkillers. If you're in construction, and unfortunately for a lot of construction folks, their jobs aren't like local. Like I'm not building something in my backyard.
Right.
I talked to this group in St. Louis, and the guy goes, "Yeah, we go to Florida we're building like I think a Dollar General, whatever they were building. It was in Florida."
And they're isolated away from their loved ones. I'm stressed when I leave and have to travel by myself.
They leave Sunday night. They stay down there sometimes 2 weeks at a time. They come back, that Friday. Of course, the kids want to see daddy and all this stuff, and the bills have got to get paid, and they work hard. They play hard. So
how do we go by industry, Dennis? How do we reach folks by
Well,
industry?
well, I'm very fortunate that I tapped into a little bit. I've watched the construction industry grow in their efforts. Started out with the Construction Financial Management Association, CFMA, and I've done some talks with them. This thing morphed into preventconstructionsuicide.com. It's got a whole little 501c3. I think it's a whole subsidiary now. It's grown, and they're taking it on hard. That and substance use, and they're going right at it. So if you want to look at an industry, if you're listening to this, like, hey, my industry suffers from this, I go point you in the direction of the construction industry. Look what they're doing.
Yeah.
It's kind of cool to watch. Over the last 10 years, this thing's really morphed into a movement.
I'd say
And
business owners need to listen. This
yeah,
is part of employee wellness. It's not just about cardiovascular events or getting hurt on the job. Getting hurt on the job can also mean mentally.
yeah. And then the rest of the articles, I'm going to come back to my little thing. I'm going to wrap
Okay,
this
come on.
session up here. The rest of the articles are scientific in nature.
All
One
right.
is talking about the frontal parietal network in patients, looking at the brain, which is really cool. The organ
The
we know
brain is so weird.
the organ we know the least about, so they're still mapping it
There's
out.
so much to know.
So they're look for objective biomarkers, and this is what I get every day: a new suicide prevention course, and all the suicide prevention courses for our listeners. They always point to the same conclusion: can you say the word suicide? Are you suicidal?
Yes.
No matter what it is, I'm going to develop my own course. I can do it. It's going to be called, just say it. Just say it. Say the word, and that's all
You
we're
know
going to
what,
do.
Dennis? I want to tell you something
Go
about
ahead.
the
It's a
science.
podcast. You can do that.
I'm going to say it. I'm going to say it. Someone told me last week or the week before last that I was talking to, said, well, you've only been doing this work for 7 years. So, why would maybe there's somebody out there that's been doing this kind of work for 30 years. So, maybe they don't think that you are really equipped or knowledgeable enough. And I laid there and I thought about that in bed that night. And you just said what you said, and you could develop that training. And I thought, but you know what? I've actually had about 30 some odd years of experience
Oh yeah.
because I've lived it. I've come through it. I've seen it from the side of accessing care. I've seen it from the side of family accessing care. I've seen it from the side of all different levels of therapy. I've seen it through my training as a social worker. So, yeah, I have a lot more than just 7 years. And I hope our world and science starts to really depend on people like us, Dennis, that have lived it, have come through it, and can tell the true story, not just what we read in the books, but how this works practically in our lives day to day. Does that make sense? I just felt like I had to say that.
No, you got to say it. And whoever said that was ill-informed because, 7 years, 30 years, I could teach someone in 7 minutes how to say the word suicide. And there are people out there with little or no training in suicide prevention who have saved somebody.
100%.
Zero training, and they showed up and they stood in that space, and then there's a person alive now because another person stepped in and said, "Hey, I got you." And so
Powerful.
we all have a role to play.
Powerful.
All of us, and we could probably, this is a great way now. You got a little insight into my prep for my life. Is every day I get a suicide feed on my phone, and my wife's like, "You sure you want to get that?" It's like, I have to stay current.
I don't get that, but I get friends sending me, hey, did you see this? Hey,
Yeah.
most recent was a man that left the airport and jumped off the parking garage up north somewhere. And I was like, I don't know about you, but when you hear that, does it feel like somebody kicked you in the gut really hard? Just
Yeah, like the guy in Wyoming, I didn't know him and I got mad at him. Like, oh, dude, just give me 8 minutes to talk to you and just said, "Let's show you my little brother's obituary and then let's talk about this." And we'll go
yes,
from there. So it's a tough subject, Jessica. I
it
wish
is.
somebody would do a podcast about it.
Me too. That knew what they were talking about. That had more than 7 years of experience.
Exactly. More than 7. I
Right.
try to think, yeah, more than 7. And it needs to be said, hey, I'm going to give a quick plug. If anyone's out there in the Greenville area on March 18th, I'm doing a live show. It's a tough
Woo!
subject live. Jessica, you got a speaking part. I got to talk to you about it.
He hasn't even told me about this, but I'm
You're
there. We're going to be
you're in.
supporting our friend.
You're in. We're going to do some connection, and then we're going out to reception afterwards because it's a tough subject. We got to debrief, and there's a nice restaurant, Italian restaurant, literally on the side of the theater. We're at the Center Stage Theater in Greenville, March 18th, and we're going to go down to Limoncello, which is a beautiful restaurant, and then go, what just happened, and talk about this stuff and make those connections. So we're putting all the industry folks together, the lay people, community, faith leaders, you name it, anybody who cares about other humans. March 18th, Greenville, South Carolina. Hopefully this
Beautiful
podcast,
Greenville, South Carolina.
beautiful.
Hopefully.
You can come visit. Don't move here. It's getting like every other place. It's getting crowded. We're going to build a wall, and Spartanburg's going to pay for it. We're not. Now that I moved there, it's time. We build a flaming moat, gasoline, or just put it around and just light it on fire. No one is allowed in,
Everybody's moving here.
except to come to my show. That's it. We'll let you in. We'll give you a temporary visa. You come see me March 18th. And it's funny because I talk about Greenville, but everywhere in America, and this is probably a podcast for another day, everywhere in America seems crowded right now. Like we are.
Traffic everywhere.
Everywhere. So
even on a Sunday. Used to be you could get around in the weekends. Nope. I'm in Columbia. I'm about an hour and a half from Dennis, and it's horrible.
You're coming to the show, though, March 18th.
I'm coming to the show. I'm bringing someone. I might bring two people. I might have to buy another ticket.
I got the moves like Jagger. It's going to be good. And I probably do have the moves like Jagger. How old is he now? Mick Jagger, like 80s. I probably have those same moves.
I don't know. Speaking of older, I think I'm going to invite my parents, my mom and stepdad to come too. So
bring them. Make it night. It's a Tuesday night. All
I've
your
never
Irish
seen them talk about this.
March 17th, St. Patrick's Day. So all your Irish folks should be well into your hangover by March 18th.
Don't call in with a headache. We know we know what happened.
Be careful with the headaches, because we learned today that people with headaches, and it's true, anyone with a loss of health. And Jessica, I think that's about it. We try to wrap these up about a half hour. We try. Sometimes we fail, and that's okay.
That's right. That's right. Because it's a tough subject.
It's a tough subject. That's a great place to end. I'm Dennis Gillan. That's Jessica Seel. And that's our episode for today. Be well, folks. Stay tuned, because we have guests coming up in the future. And if you'd like to be a guest, let me know at dennis@halfasorrow.org. I'd love to hear your story.